In the state of Colorado, there is a place built to permanently contain the most dangerous individuals in America, ADX Florence. It's not a death row facility. This is a Supermax prison, where each inmate is confined 23 hours a day inside a 7-square-meter cell, surrounded by concrete walls that prevent escape and sealed by unbreakable steel doors. This is where El Chapo, Ramzi Youssef, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, Abu Hamza, Eric Rudolph, and hundreds of others are held. People who cannot be released, cannot be reformed, and can never be allowed to escape. In this video, we will look at 30 of the most dangerous inmates currently held inside ADX Florence. Individuals so threatening that a single phone call from them could cost lives outside those walls. Number 30. Joshua Adam Schulte. In March 2017, the CIA uncovered what officials called the worst internal nightmare in its history. More than 7,000 classified documents had been leaked online. It was not the work of foreign hackers. It was an act of betrayal from within. The culprit was Joshua Adam Schulte, a cybersecurity engineer who once had direct access to the CIA's offensive cyber systems. Schulte stole a data archive known as Vault 7, then sent it to WikiLeaks, exposing hacking tools that targeted phones, smart TVs, and global networks. The leak forced dozens of intelligence operations to change course, causing billions of dollars in damage. The U.S. Department of Justice described it as the most damaging intelligence breach in the history of the CIA. In 2024, Schulte was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. He never took a life, but he was classified as a strategic threat, someone capable of harming an entire nation through information alone. Because of the risk that he could still release data from behind bars, he was placed inside ADX Florence under the highest security level in America. Number 29. Genaro Garcia Luna. He once led Mexico's federal police in the so-called war on drugs. But behind the scenes, Genaro Garcia Luna secretly accepted millions of dollars in bribes from the Sinaloa Cartel, the organization once led by El Chapo. For years, he protected their cocaine routes into the United States, leaked confidential intelligence, and disabled law enforcement operations meant to stop them. The case shocked both countries because Garcia Luna was not a street criminal. He was a cabinet-level official, controlling Mexico's entire security system. Federal prosecutors in the United States called it a betrayal of the state. When organized crime is shielded by government power, the law loses its meaning, and the criminal network grows beyond control. In October 2024, a federal court in Brooklyn sentenced him to 38 years in prison. By late June 2025, due to fears of retaliation, witness tampering, and ongoing cartel ties, he was transferred directly to ADX Florence, the place reserved for those who cannot be trusted with the outside world. Number 28. Jose Padilla. In 2002, the FBI arrested Jose Padilla at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. The U.S. government labeled him an enemy combatant, a rare designation typically reserved for members of Al-Qaeda. At first, the public believed Padilla was planning to build a dirty bomb, but later, prosecutors said he was involved in supporting international terrorism, recruiting, fundraising, and connecting foreign fighters after training in Pakistan. Padilla had once been a Chicago street criminal before becoming radicalized in prison. His story became a chilling example of silent radicalization. Without firing a weapon, he helped shape networks capable of producing future attackers. Agents described him as a slow-burning fuse within any detention environment. In 2014, his sentence was increased to 21 years. Padilla was transferred to ADX Florence not because of the number of victims, but because of his potential to spread extremist ideology to other inmates, a danger that cannot be easily measured in numbers. Number 27. Akayed Ullah. On December 11, 2017, during rush hour in Manhattan, the tunnel connecting Times Square and the Port Authority bus terminal was packed with commuters. Among them was Akayed Ullah, carrying a homemade pipe bomb strapped to his chest. He intended to detonate it in the crowd. The device partially exploded, 3 people were injured, and Ullah suffered severe burns. But investigators warned that this was one of the most dangerous modern threats, a lone wolf attacker, radicalized online and acting alone. No warning, no accomplices, no signs beforehand. Ullah told agents he acted in the name of ISIS after watching propaganda videos. In 2021, he was sentenced to life plus 30 years in prison. New York narrowly avoided a mass tragedy only because the bomb malfunctioned. Due to his high risk of renewed extremism and potential to spread radical views inside prison, Allah was placed under tight isolation at ADX Florence. Number 26. Frank Robert James. On April 12, 2022, during rush hour in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, the unlined subway car turned into chaos. Frank Robert James stood up in the middle of the train, triggered 2 smoke canisters, filled the car with gas, and fired 32 rounds. 10 people were shot, and dozens more were injured by smoke and panic. Police later said that if his gun had not jammed, the number of victims could have been far higher. James had posted numerous extremist videos online, filled with racial hatred and calls for violent retribution. This was no impulsive act. He planned every detail: body armor, gas mask, Glock handgun, spare ammunition, and escape route. In October 2023, a federal court sentenced him to 10 life terms plus 10 years. He was transferred to ADX Florence because officials determined that he posed an extreme risk of future violence and could inspire copycat attacks if allowed to interact with other inmates. Number 25. Ahmed Resam. In December 1999, while the world prepared to celebrate a new millennium, Ahmed Resam quietly drove a Chrysler from Canada into the United States, attempting to cross at the Port Angeles checkpoint. Inside his trunk were more than 45 kilograms of urea nitrate explosives, mixed with detonators and a timer, all meant for a New Year's Eve attack at Los Angeles International Airport, known as LAX. Resam had trained at an Al-Qaeda camp in Afghanistan and was preparing for a large-scale strike. But his plan collapsed when a customs inspector noticed his nervous behavior and decided to conduct a secondary search. Resam tried to flee but was captured shortly after. The FBI later called it the most significant pre-9/11 act of counterterrorism. In 2012, Resam was sentenced to 37 years in federal prison. He was once held at ADX Florence before being moved within the same prison complex for security reasons. Number 24. Richard Reed. On December 22, 2001, Richard Reed boarded American Airlines Flight 63 from Paris to Miami as an ordinary passenger. No one knew that inside the soles of his shoes, he had hidden 280 grams of PETN, one of the most powerful military-grade explosives in the world. Reed waited until the plane was over the Atlantic Ocean, then leaned down to ignite the fuse right in his seat. Smoke began to rise. Passengers noticed, and a struggle broke out. Reed was overpowered and restrained with headphone cords, duct tape, and neckties while the plane diverted for an emergency landing. Reed later admitted that he acted under Al-Qaeda ideology and said he felt no remorse. In 2002, he pleaded guilty to 8 terrorism-related charges and was sentenced to 3 life terms plus 110 years. He was placed at ADX Florence, classified as an extremist threat capable of spreading radical ideology if allowed to interact with others. Number 23. Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib. On Christmas Day, 2009, aboard Northwest Flight 253 carrying 289 passengers, Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib attempted to turn himself into a living bomb. He hid about 80 grams of PETN inside specially designed underwear, waiting to detonate near Detroit to bypass earlier bomb screenings. The device partially exploded, burning his seat and causing severe injuries before passengers subdued him. Prosecutors said he acted under a QAP, the Al-Qaeda branch in the Arabian Peninsula, after meeting extremist cleric Anwar al-Awlaki in Yemen. In 2012, Abdul Muttalib received 4 life sentences, SIs plus 50 years, without the possibility of parole. Federal prosecutors described him as a weapon remotely controlled by Al-Qaeda. He remains in complete isolation at ADX Florence due to his extreme ideological commitment and risk of continued contact with terrorist networks. Number 22. Faisal Shahzad. On the evening of May 1, 2010, in the heart of the world's busiest city, Times Square, New York, a Nissan Pathfinder began smoking in the middle of the crowd. Inside was a homemade bomb made from propane tanks, gasoline cans, fireworks, and fertilizer, enough to cause a massive blast that could have killed dozens if it had fully detonated. The man behind it was Faisal Shahzad, a Pakistani-American trained by the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, in Waziristan. Shahzad parked the vehicle in the center of Times Square, set the timer, and left for JFK Airport, attempting to flee to Dubai. The device malfunctioned, and he was arrested 53 hours later. At trial, Shahzad showed no remorse, declaring, "This is war. The war has just begun." In 2010, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His attempt to carry out a mass casualty attack in central New York placed him in ADX Florence, where inmates considered too radical and too dangerous to mix with others are held under maximum isolation. Number 21. Ahmad Khan Rahimi. On September 17, 2016, an explosion shook West 23rd Street in Manhattan's Chelsea district. Glass, nails, and metal fragments flew across half a city block, injuring more than 30 people. Hours earlier, another device had ignited near a marathon route in Seaside Park, New Jersey, and a third bomb was discovered near train tracks in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Investigators said the entire series of bombings was carried out by one man, Ahmad Khan Rahimi. When police located him, he opened fire, triggering a shootout on the streets of Linden, New Jersey, before being captured. Prosecutors described him as a self-declared jihadist, inspired by propaganda from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. In 2018, a federal court sentenced him to 2 consecutive life terms, and the state of New Jersey later added another life sentence for attempted murder of police officers. Rahimi was sent to ADX Florence because of his high potential for violence and ties to international extremist movements. Number 20. Ibrahim Suleiman Haroun. On April 25, 2003, an American patrol near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border came under heavy fire. Bullets rained from multiple directions, and 2 U.S. soldiers, Jared Dennis and Raymond Lozano, lost their lives at the scene. The attack was carried out by Ibrahim Suleiman Adnan Adam Haroun, an Al-Qaeda fighter engaged in operations alongside insurgents in the tribal regions. Haroun was more than a gunman. He also planned an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria, and when brought to trial in the United States, he refused to stand before the court, declaring that he recognized only the law of jihad. In 2018, Haroun was sentenced to life in prison. The U.S. Department of Justice described him as an international militant who moved across Libya, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Italy, and the United States before his capture. He is held at ADX Florence among inmates considered capable of inciting violence or influencing others toward extremism from within the facility. Number 19. Iraq Hamidullah. In November 2009, in Khost Province, Afghanistan, a group of insurgents ambushed U.S. and Afghan forces near Camp Leza. The assault was carefully planned: heavy machine guns, anti-tank missiles, IED mines, and even a strategy to shoot down rescue helicopters. The commander behind the operation was Iraq Hamidullah, a former Russian army officer who had defected to fight alongside the Taliban and the Haqqani network. U.S. troops fought back. Hamidullah survived the battle and was captured afterward, becoming one of the first battlefield commanders brought to the United States to face civilian court on terrorism charges. In 2015, he was sentenced to life, plus 30 years for 15 counts, including conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction and the attempted killing of American soldiers. Hamidullah was sent to ADX Florence, where the United States holds battlefield leaders considered capable of issuing orders even from behind bars, a threat more dangerous than any ordinary combatant. Number 18. Sulaiman Abu Ghaith. Right after the tragedy of September 11th, when the world was still trying to comprehend what had happened, a video surfaced. In it, Sulaiman Abu Ghaith sat beside Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri, delivering a chilling warning: the storm of airplanes will not stop. He never fired a weapon, but his danger operated on another level, inciting mass violence through words. Abu Ghaith served as Al-Qaeda's chief spokesperson, appearing in propaganda videos to recruit and encourage acts of terror. The FBI described him as a transmitter of violence, spreading extremist ideology and pushing others toward deadly actions. He was captured in 2013, extradited to the United States, and in 2014, a New York federal court sentenced him to life in prison for conspiracy to kill American citizens and providing material support to a terrorist organization. He was placed in ADX Florence because authorities believed that even a single note or hidden message from him could spark new acts of violence elsewhere. Not everyone kills with a weapon, some kill through influence. Abu Ghaith was one of them. Number 17. Mahmoud Abu Halima. On February 26, 1993, a 680-kilogram bomb exploded beneath the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing 6 people and injuring more than 1,000 others. In the shadows behind that plan stood Mahmoud Abu Halima, the man who helped organize, recruit, and coordinate logistics for the bombing team. He was part of a terror network active in New York before 9/11, connected to Ramzi Youssef and other extremist figures. Abu Halima helped prepare documents, supply manpower, and keep the operation moving forward, making him a crucial link between ideology and real-world violence. Convicted in 1994, he was originally sentenced to 240 years, later reduced to 78 years and 4 months, with a projected release date in 2060. He is held at ADX Florence under Special Administrative Measures, or SAMS, because officials determined he remains a serious threat, even in isolation, capable of aiding terrorism through communication alone. Number 16. Ahmed Abu Khatallah. On the night of September 11, 2012 in Benghazi, Libya, the U.S. diplomatic compound came under heavy attack. The assault left Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans dead. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Ahmed Abu Khatallah was the organizer and commander of the militia responsible. The FBI investigation showed that Khatallah recruited fighters, divided assault teams, and blocked rescue forces, turning the attack into a coordinated act of lethal violence. He was captured by USA Special Operations Forces in 2014 and brought to the United States for trial. In 2018, he was sentenced to 22 years, but a later appellate ruling deemed the punishment too lenient. In 2024, his sentence was increased to 28 years. Khatallah was placed in ADX Florence due to his ability to rebuild armed networks even from inside prison. He represents a type of offender dangerous not just for his past actions, but for his potential to inspire or organize future violence, if not completely isolated. Number 15. James Little Jimmy Marcello. James Marcello was not a street enforcer. His danger came from control and command. As a leader of the Chicago outfit, he was accused of ordering the murders of Tony and Michael Spilotro, along with multiple other mob killings carried out under his direction. Marcello was arrested during Operation Family Secrets, a historic FBI investigation that exposed decades of organized crime, extortion, money laundering, illegal gambling, and orchestrated homicides tied to the outfit. In 2009, Marcello was sentenced to life in prison. Why would a mafia boss be placed alongside terrorists at ADX Florence? Because he didn't need to act himself, he could command others to act for him. With loyal associates and hidden networks, figures like Marcello could still cause harm from behind bars. ADX Florence is the only facility capable of severing that kind of criminal power completely. Number 14. Tyler Davis Bingham. He doesn't need to be on the streets to cause death. Tyler Davis Bingham can end lives with nothing more than an order from behind bars. As one of the leaders of the Aryan Brotherhood, the most violent and extremist white prison gang in the federal system, Bingham became infamous for directing attacks from inside. In 1997, at USP Lewisburg, he used invisible ink letters to launch a racially targeted assault against black inmates. The result? 2 deaths and multiple injuries. Federal prosecutors said that a single instruction from Bingham could trigger violence instantly, making him not just another inmate, but an orchestrator of organized murder. Bingham was sentenced to life in prison under R1ICO laws during the major federal case against the Aryan Brotherhood. He remains at ADX Florence, where even one leaked letter could lead to another homicide. For men like him, total isolation is the only safeguard. Number 13. Luis Felipe, King Blood. Luis Felipe, known as King Blood, founded the Latin Kings in New York. What made him extremely dangerous was not the number of shootings he committed, but the fact that he continued running the gang from behind bars. According to court documents, Felipe sent over 60 coded letters ordering killings, assaults, and internal purges. Some victims lost their lives simply for being disloyal or disobedient. A federal judge said he turned his prison cell into a command center for murder. Felipe was sentenced to life, plus 45 years under R1ICO statutes. Because of his extraordinary influence, he is held under special administrative measures, severely restricting communication, phone calls, and mail. He remains at ADX Florence, a living example of how a single inmate, if not silenced, can still order deaths in the outside world. Number 12. Alfredo El Mochomo Beltran Leyva. Alfredo Beltran Leyva, known as El Mochomo, was a leading figure of the Beltran Leyva Cartel, or BLO, a Mexican drug organization that operated like a private army. The cartel controlled trafficking routes through kidnappings, torture, and executions, targeting not only rivals but also innocent civilians in captured territories. El Mochomo was arrested in Mexico in 2008, extradited to the United States in 2014, and pleaded guilty in 2016 to trafficking tons of cocaine and methamphetamine into the country. Court files revealed he supplied military-grade weapons to assassins, ordered executions, and managed an extensive network of organized violence. In 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison and ordered to forfeit $529 million. Beltran Leyva was sent to ADX Florence due to the risk of commanding cross-border crimes from within prison. For cartel leaders like him, even a single smuggled phone call could mean another life lost, which is why he remains in total isolation. Number 11. Dairo Antonio Otonio Usuga. Dairo Antonio Usuga, known as Otonio, was the leader of Clan del Golfo, the largest armed criminal organization in Colombia. Under his command, the group trafficked hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States, leaving behind a trail of terror, kidnappings, executions, and massacres. The Colombian government accused him of forcing children into combat, ordering killings of police officers, and wiping out entire villages to seize control of territory. The United States offered a $5 million reward for his capture. Otonio was finally arrested in 2021, extradited to the U.S. in 2022, and sentenced to 45 years in 2023. He was transferred to ADX Florence because he still holds tremendous influence over South American crime networks. Without maximum isolation, authorities believe he could still order killings with a single secret message from inside prison. Number 10. Sayfullo Saipov. On October 31, 2017, as New York City prepared for its Halloween celebrations, a pickup truck sped down the Manhattan West Side bike path like a missile. It plowed through cyclists and pedestrians, crushing bicycles and throwing people into the air. 8 people lost their lives, and more than 11 others were injured. Witnesses described the scene as resembling a war zone. The driver then stepped out, holding a pellet gun and a paintball gun, shouting, "Allahu Akbar," as he searched for more victims. It was Sayfullo Saipov, a self-radicalized extremist who declared that he acted in the name of ISIS. According to court records, Saipov had rented trucks in advance to practice the attack, chose the busiest hour to inflict the highest number of casualties, and left handwritten notes in the vehicle pledging loyalty to ISIS. In 2023, he was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms plus 260 years. During the trial, prosecutors said he showed no remorse and even expressed pride for what he had done. Saipov was transferred to ADX Florence, where he remains under total isolation because officials determined that his extremist ideology could still inspire copycat attacks if he were ever allowed to communicate freely. Number 9. Eric Rudolph. On the night of July 27, 1996, an explosion ripped through Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Park during a concert at the Summer Olympics. Nails and metal fragments tore through the crowd, killing 1 person and injuring 111 others. The bomber had planted a second device, timed to target rescuers arriving at the scene, but he didn't stop there. Over the next 2 years, Eric Robert Rudolph carried out bombings at women's health clinics and a nightclub in Atlanta, then at another clinic in Alabama, killing a police officer and severely injuring a nurse. From 1998 to 2003, he hid in the Appalachian Mountains, becoming one of America's most wanted fugitives. In 2005, Rudolph pleaded guilty to 4 bombings to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without parole. Today, he remains in ADX Florence, not because of his notoriety, but because his extremist ideology still endures, and he has never shown any remorse for what he did. Number 8. Terry Nichols. On April 19, 1995, America was shaken when the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City was destroyed by a massive blast. A truck packed with ANFO, a mix of fertilizer and industrial fuel, became a 7,000-pound bomb, obliterating nearly the entire structure. The explosion killed 168 people, including 19 children, and injured more than 680 others. The mastermind was Timothy McVeigh, but he did not act alone. His accomplice, Terry Nichols, gathered the bomb materials, stole detonators, rented storage space, and helped assemble the weapon. Without Nichols, the Oklahoma City bombing would never have been possible. The U.S. Attorney General called it the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in modern American history. Nichols was sentenced to life without parole in federal court, plus 161 consecutive life sentences at the state level. He is held at ADX Florence because of his systemic danger. His expertise in explosive materials and his anti-government extremist beliefs make him a continuing threat even decades later. Number 7. Abu Hamza al-Masri. Some terrorists carry guns. He carried a microphone. Abu Hamza al-Masri, a one-eyed radical cleric with 2 metal hooks replacing his hands, turned London's Finsbury Park Mosque into a headquarters for extremist propaganda. From his pulpit, he recruited fighters, urged followers to kill Westerners, and praised acts of terrorism. He was accused of involvement in the 1998 hostage crisis in Yemen, where 16 tourists were taken and 4 lost their lives, of conspiring to establish a terrorist training camp in Oregon, and of sending recruits to Afghanistan to support al-Qaeda. After years of legal battles, the United Kingdom extradited him to the United States in 2012. In 2015, a U.S. federal court sentenced him to life in prison. The judge stated clearly, "He is a global instigator of violence. His words have killed." Today, Abu Hamza remains at ADX Florence, where even one sermon from him could inspire attacks elsewhere. For inmates like him, absolute isolation is not optional. It is essential. Number 6. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. For over 30 years, the Sinaloa cartel, led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, trafficked hundreds of tons of cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin into the United States, leaving behind a legacy of kidnappings, torture, executions, and national-scale corruption. He escaped prison twice, once in 2001 through bribery at Puente Grande, and again in 2015, when his associates dug a 1.5-kilometer tunnel with lighting, rail tracks, and ventilation beneath Altiplano prison, an escape unlike anything in Mexico's history. At his 2019 federal trial in New York, jurors heard testimony that Guzman ordered killings of rivals, paid tens of millions in bribes to politicians, and managed a private army of assassins. He wasn't just a trafficker, he purchased entire systems of power to sustain his empire. El Chapo was sentenced to life plus 30 years and ordered to forfeit $12.6 billion. Due to his record of prison breaks and ability to command from afar, he is held in total isolation at ADX Florence, the only place designed to ensure he never escapes again. Number 5. Alexander Amon Cote. Alexander Amon Cote was one of 2 core members of the so-called ISIS Beatles, a cell notorious for kidnapping and torturing Western hostages in Syria. According to court records, Cote took part in beatings, restraints, and death threats, forcing hostages' families to pay ransom or record propaganda videos for ISIS. Among their well-known victims were James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, Peter Kassig, and Kayla Mueller. Cote's role went beyond violence. He engineered fear, turning torture into a psychological weapon. One former hostage said, "He spoke softly, but every word was a death sentence." In April 2022, a federal court in Virginia sentenced Cote to life in prison after he pleaded guilty to kidnapping resulting in death. He was transferred to ADX Florence to prevent any chance of ISIS communications or command structures being re-established from inside prison. Number 4. El Shafi El Sheikh. El Shafi El Sheikh was the most dangerous member of the ISIS Beatles. According to testimony and evidence, he oversaw hostage detention sites, personally tortured captives, and was involved in the deaths of American, British, and Japanese hostages while serving the terrorist group. Witnesses described how El Sheikh used psychological torment and physical abuse to break prisoners' will. He was also a central figure in ISIS propaganda, turning executions into messages meant to terrorize the world. In 2022, a U.S. federal court sentenced him to 8 consecutive life terms. El Sheikh was placed in ADX Florence for his systematic brutality and for the risk of radicalizing other inmates, making his confinement in a standard facility impossible. Number 3. Zacharias Moussaoui. In August 2001, a man from Morocco was arrested in Minnesota after taking simulator lessons for a Boeing 747 but showing no interest in learning takeoff or landing procedures. That man was Zacharias Moussaoui, a member of Al-Qaeda, later known as the 20th hijacker in the September 11th attacks. In court, Moussaoui openly expressed his extremist allegiance, showing no remorse and proclaiming support for Al-Qaeda's violent ideology. Prosecutors described him as a catalyst for global violence, dangerous not only for his actions but for his absolute devotion to extremist belief. In 2006, a federal court in Virginia sentenced him to 6 consecutive life terms. Moussaoui remains at ADX Florence, where he is kept under total isolation, because even today, his words could serve as a living tool of Al-Qaeda propaganda if he were ever allowed to speak freely. Number 2. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. On April 15, 2013, explosions ripped through the finish line of the Boston Marathon. In seconds, 2 pressure cooker bombs hidden in backpacks detonated amidst the crowd. The blast caused widespread injury and panic. 3 people lost their lives and more than 260 people were injured, with many suffering severe, life-changing wounds. The perpetrators were brothers Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. The pair then killed MIT police officer Sean Collier, carjacked a vehicle, and engaged in an extended shootout with police. When captured, Dzhokhar said the brothers intended to carry out another bombing in Times Square, New York, if they had not been stopped. While hiding on a boat, he wrote messages praising ISIS and violent jihad, according to court records. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was convicted on 30 counts and sentenced to death, a sentence reinstated by the Supreme Court in 2022. He is being held at ADX Florence during the post-trial phase, because authorities say he poses a high risk of radicalizing other inmates and becoming a symbol that could spur further violence if not kept completely isolated. Number 1. Ramzi Youssef. Before the United States experienced September 11th, there was Ramzi Youssef, the man who tried to bring down the Twin Towers 8 years earlier. On February 26, 1993, he detonated a Ryder truck bomb loaded with urea nitrate in the underground garage beneath the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 6 people lost their lives, and more than 1,000 were injured. The explosion nearly triggered collapse that would have spread to the other tower. While fleeing to Asia, Youssef continued plotting. He helped mastermind Operation Bojinka, a plan to bomb 12 passenger airliners on the same day, a plot that could have killed thousands. He tested a timed bomb on Philippine Airlines Flight 434, killing 1 person and nearly bringing down the aircraft over the Pacific. Arrested in 1995, Youssef was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 240 years, according to court records. He is held at ADX Florence, in the area sometimes referred to as Bombers Row, because authorities consider him a systemic danger, someone who could pass bomb-making knowledge to others if he were ever able to communicate freely.